Hey there, Around the Layout listeners. With advanced previews of upcoming episodes and monthly giveaways, now's the time to become an Operating Crew member. For just $3 a month, you'll get an exclusive membership sticker, your name listed on the Operating Crew roster, and automatic entry into our monthly giveaway drawings. Just as important, your financial support keeps all of our episodes from behind paywalls and free of those annoying car insurance commercials you hear on other podcasts. Joining the Operating Crew is quick and easy. Head to patreon.com/Around the Layout podcast. And if you missed that, you'll find a link on our website, aroundthelayout.com. And thank you for being a listener. Enjoy the show. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. It is time once again to find out what's happening in model railroading. And to do that, joining me, the editor of Model Railroad News, Tony Cook. Tony, good to see you, my friend.
How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing fantastic. We're recording here on Saturday. It's just another piece of my railroad-filled Saturday. So went down to Essex, Connecticut, went to the New Haven Railroad Historical and Technical Society. Long name, but they're representing a railroad that's got a long name. So
long name.
You have to have a long name. But they were doing a reunion and train show, so I was able to walk around that and meet some great people. Talk to Bill Schneider from Rapido and met a couple fans down there as well. So pretty nice little way to start the day, and then come home and record with you.
You sent me a picture of a box Tyco something, but you didn't show me what was in the box, nor have you told me yet that you did get it for me, and that when will I be expecting it to show up at the post office?
How do I keep things a surprise?
It did look like a very classic, like early 60s Tyco box. So yeah,
I would have had to have you with me, and I should have taken a picture of what was inside, but I figured you'd just be thrilled with that retro Tyco look, even before my era Tyco. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And speaking of that, toothpicks, Lincoln logs, how do flat cars are fantastic, but you need a load for it, and everybody likes those lumber loads. And I'm sure we've all dug through a parts drawer or bought sticks of balsa wood, or as I say, toothpicks, or hey, how about, those Lincoln logs if I saw the ends off or whatever. But you will never see finished lumber loads like what Jason Hill does. And he's done these for a long time. We're both meeting him for the first time. I know of him. I've reviewed his stuff before, but he has a new group of releases coming out, and that's why I wanted to have him on as our guest today, is to talk about these Owl Mountain Models lumber loads, because they are so cool.
I knew that was a segue into you bringing a guest on, so let's delay no more. Jason Hill from Owl Mountain Models. Jason, welcome to the show.
Ray, Tony, thanks for having me.
For folks that don't know, you can Google Owl Mountain Models. You're on Facebook. You've got a blog spot site as well. And yeah. I want to say, it's within the last maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
We did the first ones.
Yeah. We've been incorporated since 2011. And took us a little while to get things together. We did our first injection molded kit as the tailgate markers, which I don't know if you guys have reviewed, but it's $10 for a pair of markers. It's a pile gyro light on a tailgate you can put on the back of basically any passenger car.
Oh, okay.
And we had a few brass castings that we came out with in the first couple of years. I think it was 2012 or 2013 we came out with our first castings. And then in 2000, I believe it was 15, we got the tooling done for the first round of the lumber loads, which was the 3001 kit. And that was designed to handle most flat cars, 40 to 53 foot. And then we came out with a flat car kit in 2016, I think it was. And then in 17, we followed that up with a new narrow lumber load kit that worked on our flat cars and can fit in standard gondolas across the market. And then we've been working on other things for the last couple of years and haven't really released anything new until the Blackburn racks for the flat cars in 2020. And we got there just in time for the world to shut down in March of 2020. And so that was kind of a delayed project in terms of we got it all done, and then the world shut down and we didn't have any conventions to go to or anything for a long time. It kind of tripped that project up. So we finally got the review for Tony, what was that, a few months ago? And I think that was the August issue, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think Railroad Model Craftsman in August did the sugar beet.
The sugar beet
and that's your flat car and the upper thing. Is it 2 kits?
It's 2 kits, and we also offer it as a combo kit.
Cool.
So Tony, I sent you the combo kit on that one. And then now we've worn out the tooling actually on the 3001 kit from 2015, and it's time to try again. And instead of just recutting a new set of tooling from what from what we learned almost 10 years ago now doing the tooling for that kit, we're doing better now and not doing stupid things and over committing on the mold to where the injection molding machine doesn't like it. So now we've changed the artwork, changed the CAD model, and hit a slightly different target with the model, and that way it's a slightly different market. And we're planning a few more things coming up in the next round of tooling. We're going to do another lumber load and with some other variants, which was actually a funny story, but I'll get to that in a little bit.
I see your tagline here for modelers who give a woot about the details, and you're definitely playing off of the Owl Mountain side of things. I'm curious, you talked about the things that you've done with the company. How do you get started in this? Where's the birth point of Owl Mountain models, and what was the thing that kicked all this off?
You start with a deep question there, Ray. I mean, in a way, this goes back to my childhood. The first time I saw a steam engine was at one of the rail fairs at Sacramento, with 4449 moving slowly along the Embarcadero, and I was still small enough. My dad was carrying me at the time, and I was old enough to know what steam was, playing with a pressure cooker, and let's just say the 4449 being 16 feet tall and 10 feet wide, walking slowly along the Embarcadero with the cylinder cocks open, blowing steam 60 feet out to each side and a column of steam out the stack 100 feet tall. That was a big pressure cooker.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
I thought my dad was slightly crazy for continuing to hold me there when the engine was going to pass close enough by that he could have reached his hand out and touched the skirt as it came by. And of course, he grew up seeing engines like that in the 1940s and early 50s. So for him, it was, just a reacquaintance with an old, iron horse, basically, and left quite the impression on me. And when they had the Southern Pacific Historical Convention Historical Society Convention in Portland a few years back, we got to go tour the 4449 at Brooklyn Roundhouse on the table before they tore that down. And it was kind of a touching moment for me because I got to walk down the right side of the engine where I was introduced to the 4449. And the slightly mentally disturbing part of it was that my height that I stand at was exactly the right height for the engine. And when it came by me when I was much, much younger as a child. And my mind, as soon as the steam cloud cleared from the cylinders, the image of the drivers was exactly the same. And so, yeah, it made quite the impression. And I guess in a way, I'm a mechanically minded person, and so I was always into mechanical toys probably 4 years before they were, the age limit said you're supposed to be into that kind of toy. And my parents were great about, letting me get into that kind of stuff and not holding me back and, doing what the world said I should be doing. And so I was into model railroading by the time I was 2. And my dad was crazy enough to indulge it and go into one of the train clubs down in Southern California at Del Mar Fairgrounds until they tore that down in the 90s. And so let's just say I got started really young.
Wow.
When does shifted lumber loads and these beat racks and all that, when does that start to really enter into the picture?
Oh, well, probably in high school. By high school, I'd already done, I think I built my first plastic model when I was 6 or so. And then by the time I was into junior high, I'd already gone and started bugging the neighbor back when that was a safe thing to do. Nowadays that's kind of problematic, but that just shows how the world's messed up nowadays. But by the time I was 13, 14, I was riding my bike over to the neighbor's, and he was a master model builder of sailing ships, radio control.
Wow.
And he was scratch building from wood a model of the scow schooner Alma in 15th scale, which was about 5 feet long. And my introduction to that was, "Hi, kid. Hey, you look like you're young and flexible with your arms and stuff, and you can get inside the hull and cut off the toothpicks that I'm using as trundles on the deck. Here, go, don't get poked. So you start at the bottom, and I guess you work your way up. So it's really impressive watching him torch soldering fittings and using the bandsaw and the planer and the lathe and just machining and manufacturing this crafted model, off the plans from scratch, from literally nothing. And so I worked with him for a couple of years. He was pretty elderly and didn't live, unfortunately, to see that model complete. By the time I was supposed to get a high school job, as a 16-year-old, the folks said, "Well, what do you want to, which of the 3 places are you going to get a job? You don't do very well with kids. You're going to be a babysitter, a guy at a gas station, or you're going to bag groceries. Which do you want to do?" And I said, "I think I want to work at the model railroad shop in town." And they kind of looked at me like, "Well, you can ask. We're not going to say no." So I think I was like 15 3/4 or so, and I think it was the summer when I was 15, and I went over and we asked them, and they said, "Well, come back in September, and we'll start, lining up for the Christmas rush and stuff. We'll train you then." And and that turned into a great job. Lasted 3 years. All the other employees ended up eventually leaving, and so for the last, I think, 2 years of that job until I was a senior and graduated high school, I was their only employee at that time, just me and the boss. And it was kind of wild being a 17-year-old, and the boss goes to the bank or whatever for a few hours, and you're basically, running the place. And it's like, well, that was interesting. And, taking care of a place like that and getting here's the new layout. Do you want the kit, sir? Or would you like me to help you build a kit from scratch, a train set from effectively scratch? Here you get an engine, you get a power pack. What kind of track do you want? And you can choose from any car in the room, go for it. What do you want? Wow. And probably 60-80% of the time they would not buy the train set and buy the individual pieces. And I felt like that was a better way to start into the hobby for people. Is more likely to get to be more than just an around the Christmas tree. It'd be more of a hobby for the customer.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I used to spend one of my days off at Kansas City at Doc's Caboose down here in Kansas City, and that's at Christmas time. It was always people coming in. We'd like a train set, and we always had them. The Athearn, Bachman, Walthers, but also it'd be like, well, we'd like this, or I'm interested in that, and we would have those little plastic bins that you get, like at Dollar General or Walmart, where it's like, okay, locomotive, power pack, the track you wanted and what you want to build. And that always seemed like was a more enticing thing because it was more hands-on and they got to kind of pick their own.
Yeah. Do you like this caboose paint scheme? Do you like it in the case? Do you not want to have that was 96. So that was Bachman Easy Track was available, or we had Atlas Snap Track, or we had Flex Track. And so it was kind of, you get the chance for them to build exactly what would fit their lifestyle and their interests.
That's awesome. And wow, that was your first job at a hobby shop? I'm jealous of
that. Yeah, it was fun. And then I went to college, and I took my first semester in college to I didn't take general ed first year. I ended up going to community college, which is, for trade school. And I went with basic electronics, like electrical basics. And I went with basic manual machine shop class. And I went with a CAD CAM mid-level class, which was intro to the computer-aided design. And I got A's in machine shop and computer CAD design. And I took C's in, once I got into phased AC circuitry, the teacher was not very good, and I kind of lost it because I was not very good at phased AC circuitry. DC stuff, I was fine, but like model trains that I was used to wiring for model trains, that's not a problem. But man, getting into the phased AC circuitry and stuff, they just didn't describe it very well. So I basically said, I think I better take good grades in the classes that I'm taking. And so I switched and decided to effectively major. It was only an AS degree for what I was doing there. But I went with machine shop and CAD design. And by the time I graduated, I actually graduated early. It took me the average 5 years or whatever it is that most people take to get through trade school. But I actually was forced to graduate early because they already wanted me back as a TA to help with the machine shop. So that was kind of wild. And so then I went out into the corporate world of being a machinist and not having a BS degree in mechanical engineering, and ran right smack into the collapse of 2008. And that really hurt the industry. I think it's really sad because both my grandparents were master machinists. One of them was a telescope maker, and the other one was a surveyor and machinist for their careers. And I didn't get a lot of overlap with my grandparents, unfortunately, but it seems like I inherited the machining gene from them. And it's just really sad to see how the U.S.'s production manufacturing capacity has fallen, say, in the last 70 years. So unfortunately, my career as a journeyman machinist out in the real world was only a couple of years, and by 2009, things weren't doing so well there. So I was making it by doing some custom modeling work for friends, doing some painting and stuff like that. And in 2010, my parents decided to retire and move to Nevada, and San Diego was $1,500 a month to try to split 3 ways between roommates and stuff. And so I decided to stay with my parents, and my dad has bad knees and stuff, so it was better to be with them. And then as we were getting ready to move, I was starting to get into I'd taken SolidWorks by that point as a CAD program, which is really good for doing modeling. That's actually, I've done years of that now. And that basically, I went to one of the conventions and I ran into a friend that had actually met me years before, and I had not recognized what industry he was in. And he was actually one of the last, he was actually a guy that knew how to do injection molding stuff. And so it's just kind of one of these things where the plan of God aligns, and off you go into the path that you were supposed to go on, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like a whole combination between your early days of doing some things with your neighbor and that scratch building, combined with your retail experience when you were younger, combined with, all of these things. It's just kind of like the perfect storm of a lot of experiences come together to create Owl Mountain models.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've really created some really neat stuff. I see the shifted loads here on the blog, and talk a little bit about these shifted lumber loads and the reason why you created and were drawn to these.
around 2016, I joined the La Mesa Club in San Diego, and they're the ones that are modeling the Tehachapi Pass. Beautiful layout, 7,500 square feet of exquisite artwork that about half a dozen members spent their lifetimes. Each guy had his specialty in the craft, basically, and it was designed by a civil engineer that worked for the railroad. And we started building a fleet we were hoping eventually to get to 3,000 freight cars. I mean, that's what the concept originally was going to be. Bakersfield to Mojave, it's 70 miles of railroad that was being modeled. And as we got into operations and stuff, it's funny, Tony, you mentioned the stick-built lumber loads. That railroad daily would see about 4 lumber trains of 60 cars a day going over it between the Southern Pacific and usually one at least from the Santa Fe. And I built about 6 lumber loads, the stick-by-stick method, and went, there's no way I'm going to be building another 150 of these loads. This is
and that's what Jason, when I first saw these, I'm like, these look fantastic, but I'm going to open that box, and again, it's going to be all these toothpicks of about 3 or 4 different sizes, and it's like, I don't have that's always disappointing. Like, oh yeah, it looks great on the box. What's inside it? Most of the leaves have been taken off the wood, but yeah, it's sticks.
Now you got to skid it, boy.
Yeah. Like, oh, and what's amazing is it's injection molded plastic, which is one of the questions I wanted to ask. Where did you get an injection molding? Do you have one, or is there someplace you source to get the stuff made? Because I think that's part of what makes these look so good. Is you think, oh, the guy's got a laser cutter. Or, oh, the guy's doing this, it's molded resin or something. No, these are plastic, and you've got the wood grain detail. I mean, they're stunning looking, and I think it's because they're molded plastic. Where'd you get the equipment to do that?
Shall we say it's friends in high places.
Wow.
But you see, that's the thing, is I got the skills, and I think that's probably a takeaway that I think your listeners would be finding useful in this case, is develop your skills to complement other people in the industry, and have that be your I don't want to say it, selling point for yourself to get into the industry that you want to get into.
Yeah, kind of your ticket in.
Yeah, because I went through the school, the AS degree that I got in manufacturing technology was basically just my foot into the door into the industry. Even my teacher at the college was like, yeah, let's, I know somebody with an injection molding machine. We can do, there's people out there with injection molding machines. It's just, I happened to find somebody that sort of was in the industry more than the average person. But over the course of time, I probably had 2 or 3 different people that were, options to go with for injection molding that I've run into over the years. But even for the CNC computer-controlled milling machines and so forth, that's what I got my degree in working with. So that's the first step, because that's what it takes to be able to machine the molds for the injection molding machines. And then from there, you'd have to either go to a contract shop that can do injection molding machines, and so I mean that's your foot in the door, basically. And if you don't do that, it's the classic thing of, like, if you go to a job shop, machine shop, it's going to be, I don't even remember what the rates were back in 20 years ago now, but you're talking hundreds of dollars an hour shop rate, for the shop to do the CAD design, for them to do the machining, for them to do every step, so that's why you're in, mid, say, 5 figures for a fairly simple project. Because they have to, they're the ones doing all the work, and they're just going for you to concept it, basically. Maybe you come up with some basic CAD drawings, but it's not what they need to, actually
to work from. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I do some contract work for other people. And in some ways, how they have, ghost writers for doing writing. I actually do Ghost CAD. So the guys I work with now basically kick projects back to me, and as kind of a back door, hey, we need the back room people to work on this, not directly. So I do contract work.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
And so that, when you don't see Owl Mountain doing anything for a year or two, officially releasing something, it's usually because I'm up to my eyeballs in other people's projects.
What I thought was so innovative with these, because again, when you first see their plastics, like, oh, they look great, but it's like, I'll bet you there's one or two. So if I want to have a string of like 6 flat cars, it's like design A, B, that it's going to, but your modular design, how you stack these up, it's almost like a toy or Lego-y thing. They're fun to put together because the levels are there. You can make them what you want with the base support piece at the bottom and then the stacks of lumber. They're really fun to build and simple and easy to build. And even without paint, what you mold them in, you can almost get away because they just look like clean raw lumber. And every one of them can be just different enough that there's no duplication. It's not like, oh yeah, that's Chooch Enterprises or Woodland Scenics, whatever, again and again and again and again. And nothing wrong with any of those. But if you want to have 10 flat cars in a row or gondolas, like, oh, they all have that same molded load in them. But they're so easy to build. They're fun to build. They look great. And the uniqueness of them is the thing I just find that really draws me to the stuff that you put together like this.
Yeah, and that's what we decided to do going into the 2010s. Is then I had access to the injection molding machine, and even what's funny is even back in the days when I was in the machine shop learning CAD, I actually tried to do a lumber load kit like this when I was in school. I mean, that's how I'm going to go do model railroading with this degree. That's kind of what I was already pushing for. And the model railroad that I was involved with, like I said, they needed like 200 loads maybe, and that's what I decided is, if La Mesa Club needs 100 of something and it's not available and I can't buy it, maybe I should make it because there's probably a market out there for it if we really need that many of them. And so that's why I went with lumber loads as our first major injection molded kit. And the assembly, a funny story. When I started watching people, when I got the first samples, there was injection molded in gray plastic, which is not how the kit that you got is, Tony. And so I actually had to paint that set of loads, and that set of loads has always looked a little weird because I had to cover the gray, and I only had enough parts to build 2 kits. And that was a lot of pressure of, okay, you can't mess this up. So, because, these are like your production, these are like going to be your display, your pilot models that you're going to be taking the photos of. You better not mess this up. And it was wild because for the first time, I had the experience of building a kit the way most people are going to build our kit for the first time. And I found myself about 6 hours later still playing with shuffling the deck of parts and messing around with it to see what would look the best in my mind.
Exactly. Yeah. As I say, that's the fun thing is
it's fun.
Yeah.
Again, when I need to get model photos done.
I liken them to Legos, and I've said that to people when they've asked. I said, "Oh yeah, you stack them up. It's like having like those old girder and panel buildings or a Lego kit. It's like you can make anything you want and any size." I said, "They're it's fun to play with them." Yeah.
Yeah, and what's hilarious is I watched one of my friends down at the club. They've probably bought 15 kits from us over the years of the lumber loads, and I watched him. I was going to sit down with him for an evening and help him build a kit down at the club, and it was hilarious because he was literally doing the same thing. He probably spent 2 hours shuffling the parts and like building up each unit between the separators and stuff, and he's sitting there, it's like, okay, put glue on it. He's like, no, I still haven't quite got it the way I want it. He wasn't willing to commit. But it was and what's funny is every single person that I've seen that's opened the bag and started to build a kit, that's exactly what they do. They, so people ask me over the phone or whatever, how long does it take to build a kit? And I say, if you go build it straight through, probably 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that. But then I preface it and say, but the first one that you build will probably take you 6 to 10 because you're going to play around with it for,
Yeah.
at step 4, you're going to get, at step 4, you're going to get stuck for 2 or 3 hours playing with it. So just, enjoy the experience. Don't feel like you have to get it done. So, take 2 or 3 evenings and play with it. Enjoy it.
And this new one, like I'm running in November's Model Railroad News, I've got your new, there's 2 new kits or one has an add-on. Tell us what the new kind of revised the narrow. And when you say narrow, you mean less wide to fit on a more narrow flat car, not length like 53 foot or 40 foot.
Yeah. So the original one we came out with, I'll preface it this way again. The original one we came out with, the loads were about 18 feet long. Where's my scale rule here? I'll quickly measure one. On average, they're about 19 feet overall over the length of the boards. And that one was slightly too long to put 3 lengthwise on a 53-foot flat car. And after I did the first ones, the 3001 kit, I realized, I should have made these about a 1/4 inch shorter. It wouldn't have been noticeable on the 40-foot car when you just have 2 stacks of separate lumber. But not being able to do it 3 stacks long on a 53-foot car and really cubic capacity the car out in cubic feet was kind of a problem. So the new kit that we're releasing right now is what I'm calling the short wide. Or the wide short, I forget which way I've done the literature on it. But anyway, those are going to be slightly shorter than our previous standard wide load, which is, I'm calling them wide because that's the width of the deck. It's the more modern flat cars designed post World War I. The railroads went to, I think it was like 9'3" over the inside of the stake pockets. And that's the controlling dimension for a lumber load on a flat car, is how wide it is. And then the 3004 and 5 kit that we came out with that we're calling narrow, that's designed to fit our earlier flat car, because our flat car is a model from Southern Pacific that was, I think that deck width was decided on back in the 1880s or something like that. And those were they kept building those up until the Depression. So those need a deck width of, I think it's like 8'9" or 8'6" or something like that. So it's a lot narrower. And that actually turns out to work as the same dimension that fits inside of most of the model gondolas that are available. The only real challenge for that is the MDC 40-foot and Athearn 50-foot gondolas that have been cloned left, right, and center over the market. But pretty much everything else our load will fit right into. And then the stakes will, sometimes the stakes will have to use our thinner stakes, or with the ones that I mentioned, the MDC and the Athearn car, you actually have to basically stub the stakes into the top of the side of the car because the sides of the car are so thick. But basically with our kits, you can do any car that's on the market.
And you do the variations like the shifted ones with the side. You've got the lumber planks go in the same direction as like the rails in the flat car. And then if folks that haven't looked or are listening, you got like the ladder or lattice work on the outside. That one that's shifted, is that molded that way now? Or you can do that, can't you,
Yeah. There's photographs of cars that have shifted loads, and that particular model that I did that had the shifted load, you can slide the panels, as we call them, the pairs of boards that are molded. You can slide those and make them look like a riffle of cards, like it's sliding. And that certainly looks cool. What I did on that particular model is I basically physically bent the piece of plastic over the corner of my desk workbench as I was building it. And I did the riffle, but I also put this kink into the card, basically. Oh. And so it stacks as a kink. In reality, those are like averaging about 3-inch thick boards. And in the length of a 18 foot board, a 3-inch board, if it overhangs like 6 feet, it's not going to bend like that. But thinner boards, like 1-inch boards, would certainly bend. And there's photographs of thinner loads like that are bent. So in a way, that particular model is kind of a fake, a bit of a head fake in terms of like your mind is going to see what's not really there. What's not really there is that those boards are that thin. The model's actually using thicker boards. But in my blog article that I showed, that one of our guys, Bob Shapiro from Southern California, he posted multiple photos from various libraries and so forth. And one of the photos that he pointed me at, I think, is from Lakes. I'd have to look up the reference, but it's, I think, a Lake Superior Nishing LS&I car, and that one actually just has a straight riffle of the boards have slid, and I'll probably do another model like that, but that would actually look like our basic kit with it just slid as a like the top 18 inches or so of the load just shifted about 6 or 8 feet, and that okay, that's not right, kind of moment for the people around the trains. And in the blog article that you're mentioning, that the railroads would actually have these, basically a load shifter. It's like a guillotine that the railroad would position at the right level, and then they'd shove the car into, and it would actually try to recenter the load and get more stabilized. And if they broke boards, there's photographs of cars where the entire load, basically all of the stakes on the car broke. And the entire load is wandering around, and that's not safe. We better do something. And there was one report, and I've tried to find the reference for it. So if anybody finds it, send me a link of where that photo was, or the article. But there was an article that I think they said it was a Northwest Pacific Railroad, so it would have been like Great Northern, Northern Pacific, somebody like that, and they did a survey. I think it was ARA or AAR, maybe ICC. I can't remember which now. But anyway, they followed one lumber load moving east towards Chicago. And at the end of the report, they basically said, in 1,400 miles, we've shifted this load back 13 times.
Wow.
And this kind of led into the post-war, maybe we should start using these high-tension steel bands that the military developed during the war. Could we use those on the lumber loads? Yeah. And so by the mid-50s, they started using steel bands. And you can see by the end of the 50s, they were progressively starting to use more steel banding, which you can start dropping incrementally. You can start dropping the wooden supports and what they call dunnage on the model. You can start dropping things like the first one to go was the lateral cross ties at the top of the load, and they replaced those with either iron wire before the steel bands, or they used steel bands. And then eventually they went to the idea of palletized or unitized loads, where the steel bands actually go around the lumber load itself and like a boa constrictor, and can hold the lumber load together as a unit. And then they have multiple units that make up the load, and then they strap those together in different ways. And that's what we see on modern loads.
Amazing.
Isn't it the intricate stuff that we get into in the hobby, Ray? That, like the deck widths on flat cars that he talked about, I hadn't realized. The stuff on these bands, like, oh yeah, it's like, when did that change? And that it was okay. Wow, that's fascinating stuff. That one, as we move, the shifted lumber load is one I literally would be nervous in an operating session to couple up to, for fear that I'm going to spill it everywhere. Like, easy.
Yeah. Well, the switchmen actually say that when they find one of those shifted loads, they don't always send it over to the guillotine track to get reshifted. The classic kind of redneck way to deal with it is, well, if we hit it too hard going west, and now the stuff's falling off the west end of it, maybe we need to shove it east and hit it with something hard going the other way, and see if it goes back and balances. So there's certainly that factor. What I was originally hoping to do, and I'd never gotten around to doing it since I developed the kit until this year with that shifted load that you're talking about that I did, was I actually wanted to do one that's dangerously shifted. The one that's in that photo is kind of it's still within the car boundaries, with time to in the photo you might notice, and I actually went ahead and thought about it. I actually did model a couple of broken lateral boards where the top load that's shifted has actually smashed the lower level laterals.
Oh.
And when it shifted, it also is now so far out of place that the laterals that were going over the top of the load now aren't. And so the way I did the model actually simulated the repair that would have happened the next time it came by a yard and they actually set it over to the rip track or whatever for a carman to look at it and go, well, what do I do? Let's grab some iron wire and band the last two stake sets together and twist. And they used like a little piece of 2x4 tourniquet. Basically, and they twisted the wire up with this tourniquet piece and then stuck the tourniquet in jammed against the load. And so it's basically this kind of kludged repair of the load. You know, is it far enough to get us the next 100 miles? Yeah, get it out of here. So there's that kind of, you know, you can tell a story with each load that you build.
Yeah, for sure. And you got quite a story too here, Jason. I mean, this is just amazing, the in-depth detail that you have regarding this, and your passion certainly shows through. And we hate to cut you short here, but we do need to wrap up and whatnot. So, but no, I just want to make sure that we cover with you, you know, the folks that have heard this and heard your passion certainly should be checking you out and checking out the products that you have available. So I want to make sure we get that in. If somebody's looking to purchase, where would they head to? Tell us about it.
Right now, we're happy to support our local hobby shops because, you know, we certainly love having brick and mortar. So certain hobby shops use us and order directly from us. And so, you know, go talk to your local hobby shop about getting us as a distributor or, you know, distribute our stuff. If that's not an option, we also do website orders. And that's since the Great Coof, that's sort of been our main way that we've been doing our resale is direct via our website. And if somebody doesn't have the internet, we can take personal checks written out to Owl Mountain Models. And we have the address in Nevada. It's kind of a long address, so I don't think I'll leave that here, but we can probably put that in the description or something.
You got it.
And Tony, I think, puts that in our reviews and so forth. So that's basically how to do that. I will say we do have video instructions on YouTube currently, and I may trans-platform that to a few other video sites as well in the future. I haven't done it yet. But we have a 4-part video series on building our flat car. It's 3 parts of building the flat car and a deck weathering video that's specifically on how to rip your deck up to make it look like it's a pile of splinters with a bunch of termites holding hands trying to keep it in one piece. And we also have a video via TSG Multimedia's channel where we went over to their place and their studio, and I spent the time to build a lumber load, one of the 3004 kits, start to finish in about half an hour of video time.
Excellent.
And it also gets into some tricks on how to do some of the visual weathering tricks that I do on making the plastic look like wood.
All right. We'll definitely share all those links in the show notes. Owl Mountain Models. You can find them online at owlmtmodels.com. And then again, his news blog. We'll share that link as well. Definitely great things to check out.
Awesome. And he's ruined my Cox Big Pine lumber set from the 1970s with the little molded plastic wood blocks of cut lumber. I'm not going to be able to run those anymore now.
Aw.
Jason, want to thank you so much for joining us here on Around the Layout and sharing your fantastic operation you got going here.
Thank you much. Look forward to coming back at some point.
Well, Tony, I want to talk about enthusiasm. I think Jason's got quite a bit of it when it comes to these loads that he's creating with Owl Mountain.
Absolutely. That guy, you know, and again, as I said, I'm fascinated with everything we get into in model railroading. I feel like we end up learning something about, well, you know, this is how you have to move sugar beets, or this is what they have to do when they get them at the other end, or things. Again, as he started talking about all that, the banding of the lumber and how they fix things, like I never thought of that. Wow.
Yeah. Just yet another path that you can go down in this hobby of the intricate details it's almost endless.
Well, this is our What's New in Model Railroading, but you're the guy because we were supposed to meet up at the show, and about a week before I realized all the stuff I was working on for HO Collector's fourth quarter was all up here in Missouri, and I had to make a run up here for supplies and things, so I ended up missing the show. So you're the guy that knows what's new in the hobby right now.
Well, I'll do my best to try to fill in. I'm certainly no Tony Cook, but I can definitely tell you about what happened, and at least what I got to see happen at the NMRA National Convention. So I landed there on Saturday. Sunday had a nice little gathering, and then really the events kind of kicked off on Monday, and boy, did it kick off in a big way, because I signed up for and got to attend the BNSF Railway tour to go to their world headquarters. They have I forgot exactly, and I'm going to be the worst at telling these stories. Somebody else can probably, put in the comments all the things I got wrong, but their massive art collection, they took us through and showed us all the different art and the artifacts that they have from the history of the railroad. And then up the stairs by the boardroom where Warren Buffett bought the railroad. So we got to walk by that. We were going to stick our heads in and make some suggestions, but that was probably not a good idea. So they took us away from that. And then, but got to see that, got to go through the gift shop, and very, very cool experience. But then we loaded back on the bus, and they took us over to Alliance Yard, and that was super cool because we drove in between where all the cranes are unloading the containers off the trains and putting them on chassis or vice versa. And we got to be right there. I mean, if the crane moved a little bit over, could have picked the bus up and put it on so it was really cool to be able to see that and experience the BNSF. Those folks were very hospitable and super nice folks. It was Janelle who led it from BNSF Railway, and a special thanks to Michelle Kempema, who helped coordinate that as well. She's got about 100 hats, and she wears them all very well and does a phenomenal job.
She is great. She's so much fun. Now, wait a minute. This BNSF, you said gift shop?
Yes.
Tell me about, wow. Now the mind boggles. I would probably be more excited by a Union Pacific gift shop, but BNSF, like duffel bags, ball caps, shirts.
Yeah.
Coffee mugs. Wow.
Yep. Golf stuff. If you want a BNSF Railway barbecue set, you could have got a BNSF Railway barbecue set. Wow. It was very cool. A lot of logoed apparel that was in that store. I got myself a hat. And then, unfortunately, they didn't have my size in a sweatshirt, so I had to get that shipped to the house. But nonetheless, got ourselves some great souvenirs there. They didn't have all the BNSF stuff we joked around with Mark Herrick, with the shower curtains and the dish sets and that kind of stuff. But it was really cool. It was just a great experience to be able to see a Class 1 railroad. And when we say Class 1, that's obviously by railroading terms, but it was world class as well. Yeah. And
cool.
Very neat opportunity. Of course, and I'm forgetting, and how can I forget, our view of their network operations center. And they took us up. There was a theater, then a big reveal. They moved the curtain back, and certainly we're looking over the top of the network operations center, and we got to see basically the brain trust of the operations there. And somebody did say it makes NASA look like a closet, and it sure does. It was a huge room, but dispatching, I think, the vast majority of their railroad right from that room. So very cool to see, very unique access to those places, and certainly happy with that. The NMRA and BNSF and the folks, like I said, Michelle Kempema being a part of that, was able to coordinate that and get that to happen for us. So that was Monday, along with other operating sessions that we got to do. The week was filled with a lot of that. I mean, there was plenty of clinics and events going on. I spent a lot of time, because rail fanning was like almost out, because 100-degree temperatures, and I wasn't getting in the car to go do that. So but it was a lot of awesome opportunities to go see some layouts. Devin Jackson and his Mesquite Belt, awesome. You'd love to see this building. He built basically it was like a depot in his backyard. So it was like a train depot looking building. There's no basements down in Texas, as you well know. So if you ever find yourself in Palestine, Texas, it's definitely one to go check out. He did a really phenomenal job. Of course, we've had Dean Ferris on the layout, his N-scale Oregon joint line. And that was a beautiful layout and a lot of fun to operate. And an N-scale, which some people get a little leery about operating with N-scale, it worked so well. Phenomenal job, Dean. Great job with your layout. A lot of fun to operate. I ran the helpers, and that was something new for me to, run up one side, push a train up, turn around, push the next train back the other way. And then I did that several times, and that was a very enjoyable opportunity there. Then we got to go over to see Greg McComas's Michigan Interstate.
I've never seen it in person, but boy, all the pictures, it looks like an awesome railroad. And of course, he's Mac Rail, all the detail. So does he have a lot of details on his railroad, or is it like naked plywood and I haven't done anything yet?
I don't think he could get away with that, could he?
I was going to say, but I think it'd be sad to get there and find out this is a piece of plywood you painted green and you got Bachman Easy Track laying here.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
No, phenomenally done. What's amazing about Greg McComas's layout, it is truly the example of what can be done in a small space. I mean, I was just blown away the amount of trains that we ran in basically a small room.
Wow.
He's done a really great job of developing an operating scheme, and his details, of course, are perfect. They've been just really well done. And becomes the kind of the test bed for MacRail. And then we got to go out and we got to see the MacRail World headquarters and got a preview of how he makes some of the product and the process. So, and then afterwards we had to sign solemn secrecy and all that kind of thing. And he waved the wand over our head, and now I can't remember a whole lot, but no, he was, and of course he's coming out with some new products. And he talked about that there and also at the National Train Show, which we'll get to, but got to see his 2.0 version of the EOTs. He's made some improvements there that are really nice and make them easier to get on and off the coupler. His Mac Scrap, his scrap load material, which is just a really inventive way to get you product to make those scrap loads in open gondolas. So that was a really cool thing that he's doing. And then he previewed the railcar wheel flat fixture that he's working on at the National Train Show. So yet more stuff. And of course, if you need to get your locomotives compliant with PTC, he's the guy to talk to. He's got every antenna that you want to get done. So he's big into the details. So definitely check him out, macrailproducts.com. Good friend of the show, good friend of me, and very hospitable host, both in his home and at MacRail World headquarters. And then after that operating session, we all headed to lunch with the editor and publisher of Cowcatcher Magazine, Tim Blackwell. And then we headed over to his home and we checked out his HO scale layout and his N scale layout. Both were really neat to see. And Tim's got a really cool setup over there, place where he can publish a magazine and do a lot of testing as well. Then on Friday night, we went to the Texas Northern Model Railroad Club. Very nice club. Located in, I believe it's still considered Dallas. Very nice club, very hospitable, and beautiful layout. And it was fun. It was so fun to run on such a big railroad, taking the time, but very nice. And then that night I snuck over to David Hyde's house, and that was phenomenal. His MKT layout, and got to see that, and actually got to run a train around. It wasn't an operating session, but the folks there, including David, of course, very nice. Threw a proto throttle around my neck, which is super dangerous because now I'm itching for a proto throttle, but a lot of fun. And he did another guy, just a single bay garage, but has done a phenomenal job with the small space and putting a lot in. I also got to see Mike Armstrong's layout on the tour. That's a beautiful layout. I'm looking forward to having Mike Armstrong on the podcast very soon. And then the last one, I got to see Joe Bohannon in the Chinook lines. Joe was kind enough to give me a Chinook lines covered hopper that I've added to my collection, and I got to run a train on his layout that's located in his shed behind the house. Very nice man and great friend of the show, and it was super awesome to see that. And then, of course, in between was the National Train Show and being able to see that. And I'm sorry that you weren't able to be there. I'm sure you would have been able to pick out a lot more of the happenings that are going on in the model railroad industry, but I did pick up on a few. And of course, the first one, the big announcement from Scale Trains, the SD45X as being their new museum quality piece coming out.
That's an awesome, I was writing that up for Model Railroad News in the last week, and I emailed Mike Hopkin and Paul Ellis at Scale Trains. I said, I really don't have anything that I was writing this up. It's so cool. I can't believe you're really doing it. And they both like that. That's awesome. I said, this is such an awesome piece. I can't believe this is going to be a HO model.
Yeah. So that was a big announcement from them. They had the official Scale Trains road trip RV parked inside the building.
That's right. Yeah, so
they had the campfire set up and the chairs around it, and they had some s'mores, real s'mores that you could have as well. So they had a lot of fun with that. And of course, got to talk to Shane Wilson. He's always a pleasure to talk to, very passionate about the hobby and the neat things that they're doing at Scale Train. So it was really cool to talk to him and then see some of the other product. They just landed with the AC 4400 CWs in HO scale. I know N is pretty close, if not already here. So just really cool, and the quality that they're providing is super great. Got to see Matt Stern and from Bachman, and talk to him for a little while. And some other folks as well. And if I leave you out, I apologize. It was so overwhelming. It was just so many different people there. It's always a good time. But then I got to go over and talk to my good friend Chris Palmieri over at Home Shops. And he was checking out the GSC heavy duty flats from Class 1 that he received. He had them in a couple different road names. And he actually showed me and qualified me to be an official Home Shops car inspector. And although he didn't let me touch the tools, so maybe it wasn't that much of a qualification, but he talked me through the process and how he's assuring that every car that he ships out is of the highest quality. And he's done a fantastic job, and he knows how to make the adjustments needed. There were some early on some small quality issues, but he's got them all resolved and everything's under control and everything looks great. And if it passes the Chris Palmieri test, you're getting a quality car. So
I think V&O may be in that run. I haven't got those yet. I got 3 of the Intermountain box cars in the last couple of weeks when I got back from Texas, that those were waiting for me. And then I think he's surprised at the NMRA. He has Tangent 40-foot, the little baby high cubes. He's got tons of those, and those are fun cars. And then in the freelance schemes, even cooler. So I don't know if those are on his site yet, but be watching for those.
My affinity for 50-foot high cubes. So when I saw the 40s, I walked over and I tried to stretch them a little bit. And then he had the 86-footer, so I took and I tried to push those in. I was like, no, he's got a great collection and phenomenal again what he's doing. Really a great friend of the show. And I'm just between those two guys, between Greg McComas and Chris Palmieri, my affinity for these cottage industries, and these guys are two that are doing it right. And I'm just, so proud of the progress that they've made, and just love to watch what they're up to and see them, putting out some phenomenal products. So that was definitely cool to see. Great experience. It really was a great time down there.
Did you get to meet, Jim Wiggin got delayed. He didn't make it either. Jim at Athearn didn't make it to the show, just like me, but I think Janik was there. Did you get to meet him at the Athearn booth?
Yeah, I got to talk to Janik for a little bit. We talked a little bit about what's going on with Athearn. It was nothing really groundbreaking in the conversation, but it was great to talk to him. And then, we talked a little bit about Jim being stuck up in New Hampshire, and Jim was bummed not to be there. And I told Jim how to build a simulator for Texas, which is set your oven for 350 for 30 minutes and then just open the door. You'll get exactly what it feels like. So,
and what Athearn announced, that little, is it Respondic, the little 2-axle like industrial switcher project.
Yeah.
Which will be, for operating and other things. That's going to be an awesome little piece.
Yeah.
So that was kind of their big excitement, I think.
Yeah. And then I talked to Chris Palomares at Intermountain and got to talk to him for a little while. They had a bunch of models set out, and it was really great to have a quick conversation with him. Just a lot of great people there. And, it's almost like you don't have enough time. And then you run into people like Marty Jenkins, and you get talking to Marty Jenkins for a while, or, the folks, Chuck over at Logic Rail. having a conversation with him, and just really cool, really awesome opportunity to be down with all those folks all in the same building and having those neat conversations and get to put faces to names and everything else. It was just a really cool opportunity.
Oh, speaking of the NMRA, did you get to run into my buddy Gordy? He was all over the place and busy, I'm sure, but the president himself, did you get to meet him?
I got to meet Mr. President and had a good conversation with Mr. President, and hoping to have him here on the podcast very soon. I was
going to say, yeah, you got to have him on the show sometime.
Absolutely.
Gordy is a lot of fun. Yeah.
And Gordy, everybody calls him, obviously the president of the NMRA, but I'm looking forward to learning about Gordy the modeler. He's got 7-8 layouts. He's got quite a collection of layouts. So it'll be really interesting to have him on the show and learn about him personally. And I think that's going to be a really good time. So we're going to coordinate that time difference between the UK and here.
Oh, and I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that'll take a little logistic work, but they do that all the time with the NMRAX stuff.
Absolutely.
Worldwide deal that it's become thanks to those guys. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's my take on the NMRA National Convention. It was a great time. It was a long week. It was a hot week. I did put about 1,800 miles worth of on the rental car.
Wow.
So we did a lot of driving, did a lot of sightseeing, just a little bit of rail fanning. Got one photo outside the Gainesville, Texas Santa Fe station, which is so super cool. And I'm looking for a kit to build for that because I just think it's a really neat scene. It was a fantastic opportunity to be down there. And I appreciate everyone who came up to talk to me and mentioned and said some kind words about the show. And it was just really great to meet you and see all those things down there. So thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. Those shows, as you say, there's never enough time, and I'm always amazed at the things I miss, or I'm talking to a manufacturer and they're asking me because they can't get away from their booth.
Yeah.
But they said, hey, I heard so-and-so has this sitting out on their, do they? And I got a picture on my phone. Hang on. Oh, I got to get over there. Yeah.
Right. Great networking. Great, absolute fun time. So.
Well, that's awesome. Very awesome.
So Tony, we're going to have, I'm sure there's going to be news. National Train Show is behind us, but the news never stops in the hobby. And I know it's kind of controversial to say, but I think we are heading towards the model railroad season. I know some people don't think it stops, but I think it's maybe when it picks up really. And as we head into fall and we start thinking about our winter projects, it's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great news coming out, and I look forward to having you back next month, and we'll have yet another conversation with a great manufacturer that's out there. And then we'll talk about all the things that are happening in model railroading.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ray. And it's fun to hear about your trip down to Texas. I'm sorry we didn't meet up there, but there's always more shows.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's show on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Around the Layout. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at patreon.com/Around the Layout podcast. Past episodes and more can be found on our website, aroundthelayout.com. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.